Rainy nights have a way of making the world feel different. The sound of raindrops tapping against windows, the distant roll of thunder, the way the darkness seems thicker when the streets are slick and empty. But rain doesn't just bring cold and silence. Sometimes it brings something else. A shadow waiting just beyond the streetlights. A whisper carried in the wind. A presence you swear wasn't there a second ago. And when the rain falls the hardest, that's when they come. These are true accounts of people who learn that on rainy nights, the real danger isn't what you see, it's what you can't. Story 1, The Thing in the Road. Miguel had always loved driving in the rain. The way the world seemed quieter, the rhythm of the droplets against his windshield, it was almost peaceful. But after that night, he never drove in the rain again. It was past midnight. The storm had been raging for hours, turning the road into a river of glistening asphalt. Miguel was the only car on the highway, his wipers struggling to keep up with the downpour. Then, just up ahead, a figure in the middle of the road. His heart jumped. A woman, standing completely still, her head lowered, her soaking wet dress clinging to her thin frame. Miguel barely had time to react. He slammed the brakes, tires screeching against the wet pavement as the car skidded to a stop just inches from her. His pulse pounded in his ears. She didn't move, didn't even flinch. She just stood there, rain streaming down her face, her arms limp at her sides. Miguel swallowed hard. He reached for the horn, but then she lifted her head, and his breath caught in his throat. Her face, it wasn't right. Her skin looked dissolved, like water had been eating away at it. Her eyes were sunken pits of black, and her mouth, it stretched far too wide, splitting open like something not human. Miguel didn't wait. He hit the gas. The car lurched forward, swerving around her, tires splashing through puddles. He checked the rear-view mirror, expecting to see her standing there. But she wasn't. She was closer, running, no, gliding, after the car, her twisted mouth open in a silent scream. Miguel pressed the accelerator harder. His car roared down the empty road, water spraying up around him. Then the headlights flickered, the engine sputtered, and the car died. His breath came in ragged gasps. The rain hammered against the windshield, blurring his vision. He fumbled for the keys, trying to restart the engine. Then a tap from the window, slow, deliberate. His head turned, dread curling in his stomach. She was there, right outside, smiling. He didn't remember what happened next, only that when he woke up, it was morning. His car was parked perfectly on the side of the road. The engine was fine. His phone sat beside him, battery full, as if nothing had happened. But when he stepped out of the car, there were footprints in the mud, leading up to his window, and none walking away. Now, every time it rains, Miguel refuses to drive, because he knows she's still out there, waiting. Story 2, Someone at the Door. Sophia had always loved rainy nights. Something about the sound of raindrops against the roof made her feel safe, warm inside her small house, curled up with a book and a cup of tea. But after that night, she learned that not everything outside should be kept out. Sometimes it tries to come in. It was a stormy evening, the kind where lightning split the sky and thunder rattled the windows. Sophia had just settled onto her couch when she heard it. A knock. Slow, soft. At first, she thought she had imagined it. The rain was loud, the wind howling. Maybe a branch had hit the door. Then, another knock, more insistent this time. A chill crept over her skin. Who would be out in weather like this? She hesitated, then moved toward the peephole, her breath shallow. Outside, through the distorted glass, a figure stood in the rain, not moving, not shivering, just standing there. Lightning flashed, and for a split second, she saw it clearly. A man in a long, soaked coat, his face obscured by the shadows of his hood, his posture too still, too rigid. Sophia's stomach tightened. Something felt wrong. She cleared her throat. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a whisper, "Let me in." The voice was hoarse, barely audible over the storm. Sophia's fingers tightened around the doorknob. Every instinct told her not to open it. "Are you lost?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Do you need help?" No answer, only the sound of rain. She backed away, her pulse pounding in her ears. Then, slowly, carefully, she checked the locks. The deadbolt was in place, the chain secured. And then, a third knock, louder. This time, the doorknob turned. Sophia's breath hitched. The lock held. She took a shaky step back, heart hammering, and reached for her phone. Then, a soft creak, not from the front door, from the back door, the one she hadn't locked. Her blood turned to ice. She spun around, just in time to see the kitchen door slightly open. The rain poured outside, the wind rattling the frame, and just beyond the threshold, a figure stood. No coat, no hood, just a man, too thin, his skin gray and shriveled, his face twisted into something wrong. And when he smiled, his teeth were too many. Sophia didn't scream, didn't move. Then the front door rattled violently, as if something else was still outside, desperate to get in. And that's when she realized the thing at the back door had never knocked. The lights flickered. The walls groaned under the force of the wind. And when she blinked, both doors were shut, locked. Everything was exactly as it had been. But on the floor, near the back door, muddy footprints led inside. She never saw who or what stood outside that night. But whenever it rains, she sleeps with every lock checked twice. Because something knocked on her door once. And next time, it might not wait for her to answer. Story 3. The Face in the Window. Daniel never liked storms. Something about the way the rain blurred the world outside, the way shadows twisted under flickering streetlights, always made him uneasy. But that night, the rain didn't just bring darkness. It brought something else. It had been pouring for hours, the kind of relentless storm that made the streets look like rivers. Daniel sat alone in his apartment, the dim glow of the TV casting long shadows across the walls. Then, a flash of lightning. For a split second, the room lit up like daylight. And in that moment, something moved outside his window. His apartment was on the 4th floor. His breath caught in his throat. He turned his head slowly, his heart pounding. The rain streamed down the glass, making it hard to see. But beyond the distorted water trails, a shadow, a face, pale, hollow eyes, watching him. Daniel's body locked in place, cold dread sinking into his bones. The face didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, pressed against the glass as if it had always been there. Another flash of lightning, and it was closer. He stumbled back, knocking over a chair. His mind raced. He was 4 stories up. There was no ledge, no way someone could be standing outside. But it was there. And then, a tap, soft, deliberate, coming from the inside of the glass. Daniel's stomach twisted. That wasn't possible. He forced himself to look. The window was open, just an inch, just enough for something to slip through. His pulse thundered in his ears. He rushed forward, slamming it shut, locking it so hard his fingers ached. Then silence, only the rain, only the wind howling through the city. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. It had to be a trick of the storm, maybe a reflection, maybe his exhausted mind playing tricks on him. Then his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. His hands trembled as he opened it. No text, just a photo of his window, taken from inside his apartment. Daniel didn't sleep that night, and now, every time it rains, he keeps his curtains closed, because he knows if he looks outside, something might be looking back. Story 4. The Man Under the Streetlight. Raoul loved rainy nights. There was something calming about the way the city slowed down, the way the streets emptied as people hurried indoors. On nights like these, he liked to walk home instead of taking a cab, enjoying the solitude of the rain-soaked streets. But after that night, he never walked home in the rain again. It was late, nearly 2 a.m., and the rain had been falling steadily for hours. The streets were deserted. The only sound the rhythmic patter of raindrops against the pavement. Then, a flickering streetlight up ahead, and beneath it, a man, standing completely still in the downpour, his head tilted slightly downward, his face hidden beneath the brim of a drenched hat. Raoul slowed his pace. Something about the figure made his stomach twist. He wasn't moving, wasn't shivering, wasn't even reacting to the rain pouring over him. Raoul cleared his throat, forcing a casual tone. "You okay, man?" No response, just a soft buzz of the flickering light above. He walked faster. Then, a squelching sound, like wet shoes against pavement. Raoul's breath caught. He didn't want to look, didn't want to turn around, but instinct won over logic. And when he did, the man was closer, not walking, not running, just closer, still beneath the streetlight, still unmoving, still watching him. Raoul's pulse pounded in his ears. It was time to go. He turned forward again, walking as fast as he could without breaking into a run. His apartment was just 2 blocks away. Then, the light above him flickered. His heart stopped. The man was right there, not under the streetlight anymore, not standing still anymore, just inches behind him. Raoul's breath hitched. He bolted, sprinting down the street, lungs burning, the rain blurring everything around him. He reached his apartment door, hands shaking as he fumbled with his keys. Then, a shadow reflected in the glass. Right behind him, he twisted the key, throwing himself inside, slamming the door shut, locking it. Silence, just the rain. His chest rose and fell in ragged breaths as he pressed his forehead against the door, heart pounding. Then, slowly, he turned to look through the peephole. The hallway was empty. No sign of the man. No wet footprints. Nothing. Raoul let out a shaky breath. Maybe it had been his imagination. Maybe. Tap. A soft knock against the door. Then the lights flickered, and from the other side, a whisper. "You dropped something." Raoul didn't answer, didn't move, just stood there, too afraid to breathe. The knocking didn't come again. By morning, everything was normal. No footprints outside his door. No sign that anyone had been there. But when he picked up his keys from the floor, they were wet, like they'd been lying outside in the rain. Raoul moved out of that apartment 2 months later. But whenever he walks past a flickering streetlight, he never looks at the person standing beneath it, because he knows if he does, they might be looking back.